When you hear the name Charles Manson, it's about so much more than just a series of horrible murders. We're really talking about a cultural earthquake, a moment that ripped the 1960s apart and, honestly, still haunts us today. In this explainer, we're going to dig into how a lifelong criminal transformed into a terrifying cult leader, and why the official story we all know, well, it might not be the whole story. And nothing, I mean nothing, captures that shift quite like this quote from Joan Didion. It's so powerful. This wasn't just a crime story on the news. It was the end of an idea. The whole peace and love vibe of the counterculture, it was just shattered, almost overnight, replaced with this deep-seated fear and paranoia. So, to even begin to understand how the violence happened, you gotta understand the man himself. And Charles Manson wasn't born some kind of prophet. No, he was forged. He was a product of the American prison system, a creation of institutional failure, long before he ever became this global symbol of evil. I mean, just look at this timeline. It's just a relentless cycle of abandonment and being locked up. By the time he gets out in 1967, he spent more than half of his 32 years on Earth behind bars. For him, prison wasn't a punishment. It was his school. It was his whole world. In fact, he actually begged them not to release him. Think about that. He said he just couldn't make it on the outside. Now, what's so wild is how he used that time inside. He didn't just do his time, he studied. He completely devoured Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, learning how to mirror people, how to make them feel important. He picked up techniques from Scientology about how to break down a person's ego. He even got guitar lessons from the notorious bank robber Alvin Karpis. He was basically assembling a toolkit for total manipulation. So, armed with this really bizarre prison-honed charisma, Manson walks straight out of jail and into the heart of the Summer of Love. It's like he was perfectly designed to exploit this entire generation's search for meaning. And he wasn't just building a commune, he was building an apocalyptic death cult. So he lands in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury, right at the epicenter of the whole hippie movement. He's this kind of intense, mysterious guy with a guitar, and he immediately starts collecting people, mostly young, middle-class kids who'd run away from home. They were looking for a father figure, for anyone to tell them they were special. And his very first follower was a university library assistant named Mary Brunn. Okay, so getting followers is one thing, but the next step was absolutely crucial: isolation. Moving the whole group out to Spawn Ranch, which was this rundown old movie set, was a strategic masterstroke. Out there, cut off from the rest of the world, he could control everything: what they ate, who they slept with, and most importantly, their whole perception of reality, which he often amplified with a constant diet of LSD. But here's the thing. Manson didn't just want to be a guru in the desert. He wanted to be a rock star. And through this chance meeting with Dennis Wilson from the Beach Boys, he got a little taste of that Hollywood life. But it all went sour fast. Wilson's producer, a guy named Terry Melcher, actually came out to the ranch, listened to Manson's music, and passed. That rejection, especially from Melcher, just festered inside him and turned into a homicidal rage. And this is where the story just takes a hard left turn into the absolutely bizarre. In late 1968, the Beatles dropped the White Album. And for Charles Manson, it's not just music, it's a prophecy. He becomes completely convinced that the Beatles are speaking directly to him, warning him about a coming apocalyptic race war. And he gives it a name, straight from one of the songs, Helter Skelter. He twisted these songs into his own personal gospel. Piggies became his code word for the rich establishment he despised. Blackbird was a secret message telling Black Americans it was time to rise up and start the war. And when the war didn't just magically start on its own, Manson decided that he and his family would have to kick it off themselves to, in his words, show Blackie how to do it. And that single, insane decision led directly to two of the most infamous, terrifying nights in American crime history. The abstract prophecy was about to become horrifyingly, brutally real. The first real act of violence was against a musician friend named Gary Hinman. An attempt to get money from him went bad, and Manson ordered him killed. And crucially, they scrawled the words "political piggy" on the wall in Hinman's blood. This was a deliberate move to try and frame the Black Panthers and ignite Helter Skelter. Then, just a couple of weeks later, Manson sent his followers to a very specific address: 10050 Cielo Drive. This was the house where Terry Melcher, the producer who rejected him, used to live. His orders were chillingly simple: go in there and destroy everyone as gruesome as you can. The people living there that night were the actress Sharon Tate, who was 8.5 months pregnant, and 4 of her friends. The level of brutality was just staggering. I mean, look at these numbers. 51 stab wounds, 28 stab wounds. Before they left, they used Sharon Tate's blood to write the word pig on the front door. And you'd think that would be it, but no. The very next night, Manson, supposedly unhappy with how panicked and messy the Tate murders were, decides to lead a second raid himself. He actually gets in the car to drive them around and personally show them how it's done. He ends up randomly selecting the home of a supermarket executive named Tate-LaBianca and his wife, Rosemary. Manson and another family member, Tex Watson, went in first and tied the couple up. Then Manson left, ordering his followers to finish the job. They left a carving fork sticking out of Tate-LaBianca's stomach and carved the word war into his body. And with their blood, they wrote messages all over the house. Death to pigs, rise, and a misspelled halter-skelter on the refrigerator. 102. That's the total. 102 stab wounds inflicted on 7 people over the course of just 48 hours. It's a number that points to a level of frenzy and violence that's almost impossible to wrap your head around. So these crimes plunged Los Angeles into absolute terror. But actually catching the killers was a total mess. And the story that eventually came out in the trial, the story that got the convictions, well, it's left behind decades of really serious, lingering questions. Honestly, the police investigation was completely botched at the start. They didn't even connect the 2 crime scenes. The breakthrough came down to pure dumb luck. A 10-year-old kid found one of the murder weapons, and then family member Susan Atkins, who was in jail on totally different charges, just couldn't resist bragging to her cellmates about the murders. That one confession broke the entire case wide open. The trial was an absolute circus. It was pure theater. Manson made himself into this global spectacle, carving an X and later a swastika into his forehead right there in the courtroom. His followers would protest outside every day, which was this chilling reminder of the control he still had. They were all sentenced to death, but in a strange twist of history, their sentences were all changed to life in prison when California briefly got rid of the death penalty in 1972. Okay, so this is a really crucial point. The prosecutor, a guy named Vincent Bugliosi, he's the one who sold the whole helter-skelter motive to the jury. And you know what? It worked. It was a clean, simple, if totally insane story. But in the decades since, a ton of research suggests the real reasons were probably a lot murkier, with theories ranging from a copycat crime to a botched drug deal. And this is where it gets even deeper. Why was Manson, a parole violator, getting arrested for serious crimes, like really serious crimes, between 67 and 69, and then just being let go time after time? Could he have been a protected informant? And what about the fact that back in Haight-Ashbury, he was in the orbit of a psychiatrist who was linked to MKUltra, the CIA's illegal mind control program? We don't have definitive answers, but these questions really challenge that simple story of just a lone madman. At the end of the day, the legacy of these crimes is crystal clear. They put a violent, terrifying face on the entire counterculture. The hippie dream didn't just fade away, it was murdered. It was replaced by this new, dark reality where evil could look just like the kid next door, and absolute chaos felt like it was just one charismatic monster away. And that leaves us with this one final, really haunting question. Was Charles Manson just an anomaly, a one-of-a-kind monster who hijacked a generation's search for meaning? Or was he the logical, terrifying end product of a system that repeatedly failed him, and in doing so, created the very thing it should have feared the most?